George Kittle on slow news day. Didn't know this was happening. Thought he was done with all his tight end media. But this came out this morning as far as I saw. Listen to this cut from George. I want to get your first reaction because at first I was like, wait a minute. This doesn't sound good. But here, listen to it and you can decide for yourself.
Kyle has this thing where, like, if he wants to set up like a play action or a bootleg type of pass, he'll just call a run play that he knows is not going to work. I can't remember what game this was. I want to say it might have been like the Vikings one year, Seattle this year. But like we're running a run play multiple times and it's averaging like 2 yards a carry, 2 yards a carry, 2 yards a carry. And then we threw a play action behind it and Debo goes for 75 yards against Seattle. And the whole thing is set up because it's the exact same motion. It's the exact same alignment. It looks the exact same. And all of a sudden Debo's running the shallow. I'm faking like on the defensive end. Linebacker thinks it's power. He steps up 4 yards and Debo's uncovered in the flat running for a touchdown. So it's just stuff like that that's really fun because, I mean, Kyle Shanahan, he's like, hey, if I can get my skill players the ball with field, like with space in front of them, we're all running for days. And that's what's really fun because we have such a great yak team. And that's one thing that we always talk about. So he can scheme us up open. And it's really fun to be a part of that offense.
Your thoughts?
Initial thought is, I mean, it's a fair thing to do. Like all good coaches set up plays. Like that's legit. That's what he's trying to say. And part of me is like, okay, so you will throw away 3, 4, 5 runs on bad runs just to set up a play. Like, okay. And they mentioned the Seattle game. They were losing at halftime of that playoff game. Is that what you were doing? You were just messing around. Like, someone could get hurt. There could be a turnover. The game could get away from you. What I think is really interesting, though, beyond that is, so, okay, Kyle sets up plays, right? He wants to take that shot later after he set it up. Why'd he call play action on the first drive against Philly? Why'd you call it then? You could have called that in the third quarter. You could have set it up, but you didn't. You called it early. They didn't react to the play action. Your quarterback got hurt. You blamed it on everyone but you. Apparently what you do so well is set up plays, but you couldn't wait, could you, Kyle? You had to call it on the first drive. So what do? Do you set up plays or do you call? That's the thing with Kyle, man. He can get in a role for 3 months where his game plans are money, his play calling's money. And he's like, he can't miss. He's got the players. He's got the intellect. It's just clicking. And then he does that. It's like, whoa, that's out of character, Kyle. Wait, you're the guy who sets plays up. You called it on the first drive in the NFC Championship game. Big game. Did you crack under pressure? Kendall from Succession? I need to know.
Oh my goodness.
Because you went out of character. It's like, okay, be the guy who sets up plays and call that in the third quarter like you did against the Seahawks in the first round. But no.
But you can use play action to set up runs later in the game. Yeah. It can go both ways.
Yeah. No, the idea is you're setting up the big play, right? You're setting up the big play. You're sacrificing. I'll take a 2-yard gain. I'll take a 2-yard gain because this way I know how the defense is going to react and I can guarantee we're going to get this 75-yard gain in the third quarter. Okay, man, a lot of coaches think that way. I get it. But what happened on that first drive in Philly? The Niners act like that was a fluke. Can't look at that game. There's nothing to learn from that game. There's a lot to learn from that game, Kyle.
I think it was a fluke. I really do.
Okay.
It's not a fluke that the pass rusher beat the backup tight end. That you probably could assume that was going to happen. But the injury itself, I think, was a fluke.
If he had called a 2-yard run there to set it up later, Brock wouldn't have got hurt.
So
that's what he does so well.
That's the part that was messing with my mind. He calls plays he knows won't work. So I'm sitting there like, I think it's just the phrasing by Kittle. I'm sure Kyle would tell you, like, look, we think they're still going to gain 3, 4, 5 yards that'll help us move the chains. I'm sure Kyle doesn't call plays, saying, well, we're not going to gain any yards on this play, but that's okay. But that was just the part that was messing with my mind. So I started thinking about it, and then I went and listened to the rest of the interview. And credit to Kevin Clark, because the next question out of Clark's mouth is, does Kyle Shanahan waste plays? And George said no, and he told a story as to why.
It was when he was offensive coordinator for the Falcons. I think they're playing the Vikings. And the year that they're playing the Vikings.
Uh-oh. Lost him. I can't hear him.
And then the 35th.
You couldn't hear that? All right, here, let's try.
No, start it over.
All right.
It was when he was offensive coordinator for the Falcons. I think they're playing the Vikings. And the year that they're playing the Vikings, and he showed me, I've seen this clip like 50 times over the course of my career, and they ran the same outside zone play. They ran it 3 or 4 times in the first 30 plays. And then the 35th play, they ran it. And no, sorry, right before the 30 play, they ran a pass play action off of it. And the linebackers, they covered it, right? Mm-hmm. And so they come back to the play again, but it's a run play. And the linebacker thinks it's a pass. And so he's late to the run. And it ends up being an 80-yard run. And after that, he shows the game. And then everybody was discombobulated with it because it changes up the whole structure of the defense, because now they're like, oh, we have to overplay that. And now that's when all the passes get actually open. And so he calls it unlocking the defense, which I'm a huge fan of, because like you can see that when the defense does, they're like, they have to change up and they can't just continue with their game plan. And then once you do that, and then now they're guessing about what we're doing, that's when Kyle just kind of, eats people's lunch, because that's what he's really good at, is those game plans.
Mm-hmm. So basically, even if those plays aren't working, basically, eventually they will. One thing is going to happen. The defense is going to overplay something, and that's when Kyle will hit them with the counterpunch.
I mean, I guess if in Kyle's mind, because he's the greatest head play caller ever. But I don't know. When he faced Dan Quinn, who knows him pretty well, in the divisional round, he scored 19 points with a ton of talent. So, yeah, I mean, when it's working, when his game plan is A1, that's what essentially can happen. But what I think is interesting is, how does George know all this? You're talking about the Falcons? You were in college. And the fact that he said that Kyle's mentioned this play 50 times? 50 times? That was 2016. Like, Kyle must spend a lot of time talking about his scheme to his players. And George Kittle's been around Kyle for like 7 years. I bet you he could tell he's heard it all. You know what I mean? So it's almost like we're hearing straight from Kyle, this stuff.
I think that is part of establishing buy-in, right? Like, this is why I'm telling you we have to run this play. And even though it doesn't work, this is why you don't get discouraged. This is why we do these things. This is the method to my madness, so that, this is why, if you're a receiver, I chew your ass out when you don't block. Because the whole point of this play is, when I call the play action, you pretend like you're blocking, and then you're going to be wide ass open down the field. That's the only reason I could think of why George would have seen that clip so many times.
And that's the thing, when people like go over the top about how great Kyle is and how open he gets, it's all about his run game married with his play action passing game. Those two things. The run game is Bobby Turner. The play action passing is mostly him. And the plays look exactly the same for the first second or two. And it's really effective. You get guys open. But that's first and second down stuff. That's first and second quarter stuff. That's not situational football. If you're down, you can't do that. If there's 5 minutes left and you're down, so it works at certain times, but it's not the complete football thing. And it's just what he does really well. But I think it's important to put the full context here. Like, the Niners they don't do hurry up offense. They don't do drop back passing. It's not that good. They don't even invest in pass protection very much. It's very specific what they're doing on offense.
Yes, that's a good point. Official BNA Music says, people act like the way Kyle Shanahan sets up plays is some revolution. We've seen the Patriots do that for 20 decades. Not 20 decades, but 20
It's how you
years.
set up play action. It's how you set up play action. Yes. You establish the run.
Everybody sets up plays.
Yes.
It's not new or revolutionary. Kyle does it, I think, better than some people. But that's a good point. Like, game script has to be in your favor if you're going to run plays that you think are not going to be very successful.
So you need the number one defense to keep you ahead. It all goes into it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Tyler says, so basically it sounds like Kyle Shanahan is just stubborn and not changing his game plan. I think there is a degree of stubbornness with Kyle, but he does change his game plan week to week. But there is a degree of stubbornness with Shanahan.
We got to give him credit. During that 12-game winning streak, his game plans were money week in and week out. And I think what happened, why they lost the NFC Championship game, in my opinion, not speaking for Rob because he disagrees with me, is that his game plan was trash that day. It was trash. But he was on a heater. Like, he was on 12 games in a row of just thoroughly out coaching except for Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn got him, but the Niners won because the Cowboys turned the ball over. But really, Kyle was in his bag, to use a phrase that kids much younger than me say. He was in his bag for a long time. He's very good when he's on fire. But Bill was this way too. If it's all down to you and you're off 1 week, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You didn't have it that week, you're going to lose. I don't think he had it that week. How he had it if he got past that one drive? Maybe he would have had it. I don't know.
How do we know? We never got to see it.
Well, it's a violent game, and you can get knocked out in the first round, as they learned. It's a violent. You got to keep your dukes up.
Lou says, you two in a good business right now. Judging from the chat, 49er fans are never going to advance beyond Lance Purdy war. You're lost in the darkness. The war is over. Okay, like, the war is over. Purdy won. He's going to play. He's going to start. Like, there is no Well, you're making a face. Why are you making a face?
If he hadn't torn his UCL, the war would be over, but he did. And so it's all like, well, we project that he'll be back and we project that he'll be fine. And we project like, sure. Great. Okay. We'll see. And if he is, then yeah, the Trey's in a tough spot, but we don't know. He's not back. He's throwing 10-yard passes. He's not throwing with any zip. Like, he's got a long way to go. He hasn't even proven he can stay healthy for more than a couple months at a time. Trey's not going anywhere. You know, Trey's going to get another chance at some point. It may not be week 1, but he's going to get another chance, I would think.
I feel like you are, shocker, everyone, Grant is being negative. I feel like everybody else around the 49ers is like, Brock is back. He's throwing 3 times a week. Kittle in one of his interviews said, oh, yeah. He's good. He'll be starting.
I saw him throw once or twice. He's fine. He literally said that. I saw him throw once or twice. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Moose still says it's far from over, Rob. I guess. I mean, the 49ers are selling you that it's over. That's the message they want you to believe. Brock.
They said that about Trey last year, right? It was Trey's team last year.
Yeah, well,
two losses later, 1 loss and a broken ankle later is like, you know what? We changed our mind. Sorry, this guy's been good for 2 months. It's like, yeah, they're a little reactive.
Well, yeah, they brought Jimmy Garoppolo back less than 2 weeks before the season began. So the idea
let's say Brock loses week 1, starts week 1, loses week 1, has a setback, and they say, yeah, he really shouldn't have been playing. He's not starting week 2. Sam Darnold starting week 2, and he wins 3 games in a row. All of a sudden, he's going to be the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yes. And
we're like 2 months away from that.
That is like I said, the least secure position in sports is starting quarterback of the 49ers. Because all you got to do is play good for 3 games or play bad for 3 games, and you could be out of a job.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. And that speaks to I don't know if you want to say dysfunction or a lack of a serious plan at the position. If you have a real plan and you have conviction in it, you don't oscillate back and forth to the path of least resistance or whatever. Like, that's the mark of an organization with no plan, or no plan that they can agree on.